I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
We need to, are we removing the executive session?
I don't need to have an executive session. If you want to, we can with the personnel issue if you have any. Or we can wait since we didn't get as far as the public would. So I'm okay with omitting it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we will not need the executive session after all, so Joni, do we need a different motion for that, or? I guess you can
remove the executive session, so the motion will be to amend.
Okay.
Is that what I need to say? Move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. Do you have any further comment?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is consent agenda.
I move to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. Old business, approved free lunch program form and parent incentive.
This was presented last month, or initially presented last month, and we just want to get approval to move forward with this. We have to have the household economic survey to serve as that proxy for free and reduced. Dr. Decker might want to explain how they're looking at doing the logistics behind any of that, but we spent some time to figure out how we can make that kind of work. So.
Sure. Here by in middle of July, there'll be an email coming out from the district that's going to share some information that tells and encourages parents to go ahead and fill out the form that we need them to do for consent and for free and reduced lunch. And effectively, what it's going to do is allow us to get more of those forms turned in. Because you guys may remember this past year, we figured that the district lost around $200,000 just simply from people not filling out the forms. An unintended consequence of providing everybody free lunch was that it no longer incentivized people to fill out the form. But the form is so much more than just free lunch. The form is effectively bringing in more money into the classrooms, more money for curriculum, more money for instruction. And so when you lose that money, then all of those things tend to suffer. So what the superintendent and the rest of us came up with was an incentive program that allows you to get up to $20 off. So it would be $10 off of the enrollment, and then $10 off of the textbook, or the tech fee associated for those that are charged the tech fee, because not all grades get the tech fee. But so it's up to $20 off per child. So if you're a family with multiple children, that incentive is for each one of the children. And it's what it is it's allowing us to get those forms turned in by the September 1st deadline that we're trying to meet. To make sure we get that funding. So the important thing is that more information is coming, but parents will have the ability to actually just fill that form out online and submit it. So you won't have to come into the district office. However, if you need to come into the district office, or if that's more convenient, then we'll also have the physical forms, and those will be available as well in mid-July, and those will be here at the district office as well as each of the attendance centers. So we're really excited about that, and we're hoping that it's a good incentive and gets parents to fill out that form. So number one, we can know a little bit more about Newton families and how better to serve them, but secondly, so that we can get the proper funding to operate the schools.
And I saw today on Facebook that there is a Facebook Live on Wednesday at 1 o'clock
Yes,
for
thank you.
people to chime in with questions. And if they aren't able to attend that, can they just email info@usd373.org? Email questions, because I'm sure there's lots of families who have specific questions. So send those to the district or tune in Wednesday at 1 on Facebook Live.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or further discussion? Yes.
I move to approve the use of the household economic survey to be used for the 2021-2022 school year and include the incentive for completion of those forms by parents on behalf of their student, $10 off of curriculum fee for all students, and technology fee for students in grades 7 through 12.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. Approve 2021-22 handbooks. And these are handbooks that we received at the previous meeting for classified staff, the elementary parent handbook, Santa Fe 5-6 center student handbook. Are there any questions or comments? No? I will entertain a motion for that.
I move to approve classified staff handbook, elementary parent handbook, and Santa Fe 5-6 center student handbook for 2021-2022.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. Approve ESER 2 plan.
I included this morning in board docs a couple of options for the ESER 2 plans. I went over the basic one at the last meeting. There have been some changes since that time. One of the changes that actually occurred that day that wasn't reflected in what I submitted was the renewal of the Khajiit hotspots. So we moved those funds around. And then one thing, as I originally put in, the premium paid per staff was $275,000. That equated to about $420 or $36. I have to go back and look at exactly what I put down. That equates to about $436 per staff, or pardon me, $423 per staff. I like the idea of a $500 rather than $423. I just think that sounded better, and obviously any sort of compensation that we give people, they've got to take taxes and all the other fixed costs out of that. That would make that cost approximately $352,000. So what I did was shift out on that second option that I have, that you guys have seen in board docs, shifted out that planning and implementing the summer learning with that Marzano Academies, removed that $80,000, accounted for that $352, that increase of $72,000 for that premium pay, and put the remainder essentially on HVAC costs. So what we'd like to do is get approval for this basic plan for us to complete that at the state, so that we can get that to them, hopefully to where they have enough time to get it on the July State Board of Education meeting. And if not, it'll be for sure on the August State Board of Education meeting. But these are the categories. This accounts for all ESER $2. But that leaves us with $5.2 or $3 million for ESER 3 that we'll also start working on after we get this approved at the state. Any questions? We'll stand for any questions. Or sit or dance or whatever you need us to do.
Darn, I wish I had a question.
Yeah.
No.
No, we're so close, we could probably do that. It's so odd with us being so close. It's great.
Does anyone want to make a motion for that?
I'll move to approve the ESER 2 plan as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0.
Option 2. Option 2.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Our next item is review of the 2021-2022 Summit Learning Plan.
Okay, before we get started, one of the things we do want to recognize on your personnel report this evening, Heidi Flores was named. She is now going to be the principal for Santa Fe 5-6 Center. So Heidi will be here tonight to kind of help answer any questions you have, as well as Joey and Mr. Miniga, I can never say his last name right, and Mr. Nullick. So you guys were given this plan to review over the weekend. We're just here to answer any questions you might have about this, provide any clarification. If you need to give us more direction in that regard, we will be more than happy to do so.
Does anyone have any questions?
I mean, I was curious, it talks about the plan description, this is a combined effort by staff and parents of Santa Fe, Chisholm, and district admin. How many parents did we have in the process so far that we're helping with
It would have been just that parent focus group,
Okay.
in addition to the parent survey data that we've got in terms of making some recommendations. And you guys can speak up at any time if I'm not answering anything correctly, or Sheila. At that time, at this time of year, that's just kind of where we landed with that.
Now, did I understand when I was reading through this that the mentoring is going to be bi-weekly?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna.
What does that look like?
It's gonna be the same as what we've been doing, but we're gonna match what Santa Fe was doing with bi-weekly mentoring. What that does is provide some more flexibility during the SDL time for teachers to do workshops and work with students throughout the week. Because with the weekly mentoring, at least at Chisholm, a big focus during that SDL time is trying to meet with each student, which towards the end of the year when we were having lots of staff take personal days and use up their time was really, really hard to accomplish. So we're hoping by doing bi-weekly, that's going to help teachers be able to meet with every single student at least once every 2 weeks, even if we have some extra absences, it'll be a little bit easier to cover that. But then also frees up some time during SDL to do more workshops with students and focus on helping students when they need it, rather than spending all of their time doing individual mentoring.
I noticed on here under action step 3, so curriculum alignment and customization, you have a line that says vet all resources, projects, and focus areas to fit Newton students. Can someone explain to me exactly the process of vetting these resources, who is doing that, kind of the time frame, how does that all work? What's it look like?
I think part of it, well, what we would love to do, and the eventual goal is that all teachers who are in the Summit platform sit down and coordinate with each other and collaborate with curriculum planning. And so what that looks like is that they go through every project, and within each project there's a series of resources, which can be articles, videos, a variety of things. And teachers are looking at every single resource in there, and if it fits, perfect. If there's an additional resource that's even better, great. If it doesn't fit what we're doing, take it out and put it in something else. And I know that we have some courses, like I think it's our 8th grade U.S. history course, which they have gone through and built that course from scratch. And so it wouldn't necessarily be building every course from scratch, but would be going through all of the different projects that are in each core content area and checking every single resource that's available and making sure that it fits what we're trying to do.
Is that what has been done in previous years, or is this kind of a new approach to handling that?
It's what should be done. The first year was more of looking through the curriculum, looking at what was there, but also just kind of learning how to implement Summit as a teacher. So I don't know that there was necessarily the thorough vetting of every single resource. I'm not sure. I wasn't, in their shoes, I guess. But I think moving forward, that is definitely what we want to do to make sure that we truly tailor it to Newton and what our students need is to. And I know some of that has already happened, but we want to make sure that that happens across the board with every single class at every grade level.
And so Sheila, that might kind of be a question for you, since our admins are both fairly new to this. And I see that the date to begin is this August and the due date is next August. So if all of these resources are being vetted, what does that look like for the resources at the beginning of the year? Kind of what's the timeline for this?
Right. So we've shared a lot of emails back and forth and trying to think about how we can get some of those staff together to be able to do that. And one of the challenges would be trying to give teachers time to just take a break, but yet also be ready. So I know one of the things that we have worked on a little bit towards the tail end of the school year was like an ELA, and there were novels that they were considering for units that would have been, and I know Kathleen was a part of that too, even with what we were doing at the high school. So we brought that pre-K-12 ELA team together and revised our form and talked about anything and everything from maybe if there was sensitive content in there, not just that it was something that was being recommended by the platform, but just what's going on globally and how do we address that? Is this really a novel that we want to try to use as lessons in the classroom, given our set of dynamics here, whether it was culture, race, gender, something political? I mean, it could be any of those sensitive topics. So we definitely started on some of that, but we have more work to do there yet. And so in visiting with some of the teachers that were here at some of the training at the first part of June, it'll kind of be a stair step, if you will, like what do I need to have ready so that I can use that in that first month. And then just have some frequent meetings throughout the semester as opposed to trying to cram it all in August to be ready. I don't think that would be feasible. Sure.
There will be some collaboration time built in early August with the in-service stage for them to do some of that ready.
Okay. I know there have been some questionable resources and material put out in previous years. So what is being proposed for this year is different than the way we've handled it in the past. Try to hopefully catch that before it gets to students.
And then we're going to get a report at some point during this school year, how things are going.
Yeah, you'll get the same monthly data updates from them, and then at the December board meeting is when you guys are going to vote as to whether or not we continue with the platform. Yeah. And if you need more information during that time, let us know. You know, the one thing we want to make sure that the parents, we want them to reach out as well with those concerns.
Are there any other questions from board members? Admins, do you have anything that you want to add?
You know, I'll just say something at Santa Fe that we talked about too was not only with our team and content times, but making cross-curricular projects, aligning the standards that way too. So it's kind of like an all hands on deck approach. And so the resources and things will have several eyes on it and maybe not just their content specific person in all cases.
So what is this creating a regular learning core platform? What is involved in that?
That's kind of making sure that what is in there is appropriate for Newton. It's not the Summit Learning Platform, just carte blanche, their resources that we've interjected, what we need to have that represents our school community. That's what that should
maybe
look
a little
like.
more structured as far as what, I don't know what the right word is, but.
Well, for example, we heard things throughout the course of the year, especially from a resource perspective, that there wasn't a balanced set of materials available. It was representing one ideological side.
Right.
So what we want to make sure that we do is we represent what our community represents in terms of what resources should be accessible. And that's always a fun thing to do because some of the stuff is challenging.
Can I just ask a quick question? I looked at this weekend and I'm kind of missing it again. The parent involvement, is that under where you have, when we're talking about Board of Education community trainings, or where do the parents' feedback, where does that come in play in this new plan?
What page are you on?
Are you talking about?
I'm on the action step 5, professional learning. I just know we talked a lot about the parents' involvement and just wondering where their feedback would be before we meet in December.
I think part of that is in some of those misperceptions and how they're going to try to, through the parent nights and things like that, get those parents involved in that, and you guys can expand upon that. I know Heidi, for example, we were talking today about she wants to have some stuff early on in the year, even before school starts, directly before, to get parents involved in some of the conversations with that so they understand what's going on.
Yeah, like we talked about parent universities, and this was also brought up in our parent focus group as the need, so they better understand the platform and maybe even have times where the teachers can show what they do within their content areas and what the responsibility of the students are, as well as the students take ownership of what they're doing on theirs, and so they can also show that they can teach the parents. So maybe like when they have a question or something at home, they can turn to their kid or their, and maybe the answer is there, and if they're not answered there, they can reach out to the teacher or the administrator or anyone in the building.
Okay, it sounds like we've asked all of our questions. Thank you for the time that you put into this over the summer especially. I know you started working before summer, but thank you for following up with this. I'm anxious to see how things go this year. Our next item is Lindley Hall update.
Luke or Andy, you guys have just a quick appropriately timed based upon the events of the weekend.
Yeah, debate's over. No, so we're at a point right now where we're really just kind of finalizing what this project's going to look like. We've kind of hashed out the history, brought in some experts from the Historical Society, brought in journalists to tell us what they know about everything that's gone on in the past and what's led us to this point. But right now, we asked for more community input and waited a while for that to develop, and there was a few pieces of information that were new that were brought to the table, but not a huge outpouring there. But we're at a point right now where we've asked every committee member to just sort of finalize their list. What do you want to make sure this project has? And Andy and I are going to be sitting down within the next week or so to really finalize that and have a plan to present to the whole board how we're going to go forward. Hopefully I would say by that August 2nd meeting that'd be a good target date for me. Anything you want to add to that?
I think you covered it now.
All right.
You guys have been meeting for months now. When did you guys start this process?
February, wasn't it? February.
No, I think it's before then.
Was it?
Yeah,
It's been a minute.
it has been a minute. A lot's happened since then.
Really appreciate the help with the media and other people reaching out, trying to get information, trying to get people involved. And so I think we've scoured as much as we can, and we aren't as far along as I would have liked to see us with involvement, but I think we've got a good, who are we here for? And I'm looking forward to presenting for them. So it'll be good.
Do you have any idea of like what the end product is kind of going to look like? So I've heard everything from a mural to kind of more like a museum type display. So just any kind of.
Yeah, I'd be real careful to set any concrete quite yet because we're still in the exploratory phase and we've gotten a lot of information. We do have some pieces being donated that we're excited about, but we have an artist working on some pieces that's been working on it for a couple of weeks. We've looked at a lot of different things, but when the team comes together, I think it's tomorrow, we'll start solidifying what each person feels like needs to be brought to the table so we're all included in that decision. And then me and Luke crystallize what we believe that vision needs to look like with all the data we've shared and all the pieces that we've looked at and all the stuff we scoured. And once we get that, we're going to show it to our team, the inside team, the board, the little committee, and say, hey guys, what do you think? Did we miss anything? Are we hitting this on the head? Have one more time to do some tweaks and get their feedback before we want to bring that to this group here. So we're still a couple steps away, but we're getting close.
That's definitely a possibility. It's going to be more than just a plaque, like I know some people have mentioned. So the focus is going to be on honoring those that were excluded, and we have several ideas on the table of what we're going to do. But like Andy said, we really kind of need to pick that apart and say what's going to make the final cut here. So
I think we've got a pretty special team in between everybody. I think it'll be a special presentation for our community.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. Okay, new business, district data report.
Sheila's going to go over some data from the district this past year. So there's a lot there, a lot to chew on.
I gave you some handouts at your table, just in case there was something you wanted to look at a little bit closer there, but I'll reference those as we go through this. As Fred said, there is a lot here, and so hopefully just kind of dip your toes into what we might look at through a school year, but I know there was a request as to looking at some data points there, and then also just being mindful of the year we've just gone through as we review some of this. So as I thought back to when we were first starting, it seems like it was about 10 years ago, it seems like, as to where we were. And I know that in that return to learn, these were some things that we were primarily focusing on, certainly that well-being of all, the rigorous instruction and the flexibility. And so what I'm going to do tonight is to share with you just a few data points. You do have a handout there that has that well-being of all at the top, and there's a long list of things. I might have excluded some things there, but was trying to think about things we talked about as a lead team. I know the building level did with their leadership teams, to maybe even at the classroom level. So trying to think about where they fit and what those data points might have been, and they would be quantitative as well as qualitative. So we're just going to show you just a few of those this evening and kind of give you an idea of how things look. So one of the first ones, as I think about Fred continuing to ask, what's your feedback loop? I think as a team we've heard that often, no matter what meeting we've been in, and I appreciate that perspective in thinking about as we're working on whatever task, how are you going to get feedback based on what it is that you're doing? And so this is a graphic that is kind of complex, but when you break it down and looking at each of those areas, I think that it is showing that it's just an ongoing cycle of whether we're looking at data, having those conversations, certainly a system approach and all of that, a lot of communication in there, but doing that to where we've got things going on at that building level, those grade level collaborative teams, and then that district team, and everybody looking at the various things that we're trying to figure out. At the building level then, I know these were questions that they too would have looked at, and thinking about that weekly collaboration time and making those database decisions. BLT there would mean how often does the building leadership team meet, and then how often do the grade level teams meet. So one of the data points that I'm going to look at here first would be underneath that rigorous instruction and that graduation rate. You're going to see a 4-year span here. As I was pulling the data, not everything was right at our fingertips yet. I know that some of our things have just been submitted from the building levels, and there's still a little bit of cleanup to do in that. So as I look at Caleb, I know that we don't have 2021 on there yet, but once we receive that, then we'll update that. So we're just looking at prior to this last spring. And on the left-hand side there, you would see what the state graduation rate, that average would be. And I just put the percentages there for those last 2 years of 19 and then of 20. And on the right then would be what that looks like for the Newton graduation rate. So just some quick glances there. I'm seeing that we had an increase from that spring of 2019 to spring of 2020. So that's encouraging to see that. And I know at the high school, Caleb's been working hard and thinking about that graduation rate and seeing that improve, and has been putting teams together and talking about their strategic plan and saying, okay, how can we impact that in a positive way? So I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see that rise.
Sheila, does this include Opportunity Academy?
Yes, this would be for the entire district. I didn't break it down by building.
And do we know what year they were included? I'm not sure how long we've had Opportunity Academy.
I think this is the second one.
They, correct. So the 2020 would include Opportunity Academy in that percentage, because they would have completed their second year this year.
Yeah, so the 18-19 does not include Paul Community Academy, or was it
Correct.
considered a program, wasn't even existing?
There's a data point on chronic absenteeism for 18-19 for
Okay.
Academy. If I'm reading it right.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, but you know, now that I think about that though, we would have had them reopened up in January for that building, so that would have been accurate. We would have had them there for half of the year.
So they're included in the blue 18, 19?
Yeah, that would be, it would have been a very, very small group at that point. But yes, they would have been included in that one also. So then as Luke was mentioning, the next one there then is the chronic absenteeism. And what you're going to see in this view, again, it does not have our most recent school year available yet, but it does show the three that are there from 2017-18 to the 19-20. So on the far left would show the state average, and it has stayed constant at a 13.9% chronic absenteeism. And then the abbreviations that you see down below would be designating each of our buildings. The percentage that is there is the one that would be showing the 2020. I didn't put the percentage for all three bars, trying to not make it too busy to be able to read or understand. And so you can see the ups and downs of what has happened, and I would imagine that 2021 with once that data is available, will even look maybe not as appealing as we would like to see that, just given the school year that we just had. But I can see as I look at that, Northridge, Santa Fe, and the high school did have decreases in their chronic absenteeism. And as looking at all three of those years together. And then whenever we're looking at the trends in the data, we're thinking about, okay, we see this, we review, we reflect, we analyze, and we think about, all right, what do we need to be doing to try to impact that in a different way, and hopefully in a positive way. Then our next one. Again, this one still does not have anything from this most recent year. What you'll see is a side-by-side. And I would point out that I believe it was 18-19 was the first year that the ACT was made available to all campers in the state of Kansas. And so I can recall of us wondering how that might impact just increasing the number of students. Like you actually see that as a decline, not only at the state level, but at the district level, just due to the larger number of students that would be taking that. All right, then I'm going to switch gears here a little bit on you and hopefully try not to throw too many acronyms at you. I did on that one printout try to expel out any of those as to what they might mean. And this would be one of the first ones that we haven't maybe talked about as frequently, but a tool that we started a year ago and then did not get to use it the entire school year because of the shutdown that occurred in that fourth quarter. So this year would have been the first year that we actually used it. And so we referenced that. each of the benchmarks we test in the fall and the winter and the spring, whether it's that classroom teacher, grade level, or department, or even building leadership team, they're going to be looking at that data and seeing how well their students are doing. If they can see that more than 20% are meeting intervention, then they need to think about what their core structure should look like, because they're going to lose and then they have a variety of ways of looking at instruction besides just what I listed there, the analysis of observation types, certificates, demonstrations, and things like that. And then the other part that is there is just mentioning what teachers are doing in regards to interventions and how we record that, so that anyone that might be supporting us can have access to that. So when we think about each of these by grade level, this first one here is the MyAP, another acronym. AAP stands for Individual Growth and Development. After they too also assess their students in fall, winter, and spring. So these are all the assessments that they would do with those students. And so if we look at the first graph on just one of those, I selected the sound identification for you to see. This one has a little bit different colors on the charts in comparison to what we use in CAS. We used to have the red, yellow, and green when we were using AimsWeb for our universal screener. So what you're seeing there is the green would be those students that are in half benchmark or above. So we would want to see a gradual increase of the green from fall to spring. And we would want to see the red, which would be tier 3, decreasing from fall to spring.
Another question. Is this given both years of pre-K or is the second year of pre-K before they go to kindergarten?
It would just be right before they go to kindergarten. Then when we switch to the FAST assessments there, this one is under the early reading and showing the kindergarten and first grade and the assessments that would be given to the students at those levels. This would also be fall, winter, and spring. So we're going to switch colors here a little bit, and when you look at this one, we're wanting to see scores being in the light purple and the darker purple. That would mean that students are above target. You can see the percentiles listed there, or they might be in tier 1 or tier 2, and that would be ones we would reference as a bubble student. They're just not have borders, and we want to watch them closely to see how they're doing. Tier 2 would be the lighter pink. There is some risk, and tier 3 would be they are at high risk, and in that 0 to 14 percentile. So as we look at the first chart here, then this is showing at a glance how we were doing at the kindergarten and first grade levels, and as you can see, those are listed fall, winter, spring. There's a line in the middle that's showing the benchmark, so those purples, anything that is above that, so that's what we're hoping for, where our students would be scoring in those levels. And as you can see, kindergarten had a decline, in fact, a negative 29% decline from fall to spring. So I know that those kindergarten teachers, when they return in August, they will be looking at that, and I want to preface it with, we have not discussed this data with them that had the spring results, as they may have at the building level, but not as a grade-wide bubble team. There wasn't another time where they could have been getting together to look at that. But I know at the building levels, they were looking at that data to think about what are we going to have in place when those kids return in August, so that we can best support them. First grade, you can see, I remember when this one came in the fall, that is the lowest we've ever had a group of students at the first grade level in the fall. And I know that during those conversations, we were attributing a lot of that to that fourth quarter shutdown for those kindergartners. That was extremely difficult for them to go through what would be so much of a growth for 9 weeks to try to do that only through the computer. So the gains that they have there is tremendous. As we look at these, to kind of give you a gauge, what we would hope for is we would see an approximate 10% growth from fall to spring. So the fact that they had a 24% growth, there was a lot of teaching and learning going on there. as well as intervention to try to help those first graders. I'm confident, though, that the kindergarten teachers will be visiting with those first grade teachers either at the building level or at the district level to say, okay, what do we need to do so that we can make sure when they start that first grade year, they're going to be ready. And might also add that some of our summer programming, those students that would be in these 2 grade levels right here are benefiting from support that we've had either in our Y Scholars that just started last week or our Realer Connection that's going to be going on in July. So this was one piece of data we would have been looking at quite heavily there to try to see how we can give them some additional support before they return to school. So then the rest of the graphs that I'm going to show you, this is just giving you an idea of what is happening with that AB. And again, that's the one that I shared with the students into the computer. And it answers those questions to see how they're going to do. And this kind of knows all the different topics depending upon the grade band that they're in as to what might be the focus for the reading. So the first glance here then is what we've got is grades 2 through 4. So there's 3 panels there. And what we would hope to see again is an increase. So if I look at 3rd grade, we had a really nice gain from fall to spring. If I switch it, this one, when I was trying to get all of them to fit on the screen, you won't see the grade level, but there are 4 panels up there, and they are in order from 5th to 6th to 7th to 8th. And so you can see how they were doing then on this universal screening data. Hoping to see the light purples being the larger number. When we look at the one for 9 through 12, I sent this to Caleb to let him know that there is just a little bit of a weirdness to the senior one, but there's a couple of things that attributed to that, so I didn't go in and try to change it based on this view, but there were several seniors, if I remember right, that didn't have seminar, and that's when we administered this assessment. And so that number of those that were assessed in the spring, this is just not accurate.
Well, and the reality is we test them in May, and then what are we going to do in 2 weeks' time? I mean,
Right.
so
Right.
it's really not. That,
Yeah. And I applauded the high school when they looked at this one this year, and because in the past we hadn't always had 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders taking this assessment, and it was like, yeah, we're going to do that. Okay, cool. So I just want you to know on that one, it just looks a lot. But again, looking at how the students were doing on that AB. So then we'll switch and just go through the same set of slides here then. The next one is a focus on math. So here's the 90, and like I said, this would be the last year that Cooper's going to be using that one. They're going to be switching to the FAST, and it'll be very similar assessments as what were in this one. So this first graph is looking at their progress on the number naming. So definitely a different look from what we saw in the literacy to this one as to more strengths is the way I would interpret that. If you'll remember, the red was quite a bit larger for the reading, so the math seems to be more of a strength for the students there. And we were going to see a gradual increase on the green and a decrease on the yellow and the red. And then for the early math, these are the assessments that would be administered in KN1. And many of these, if I didn't mention it earlier, are more of a one-on-one setting. So if you know of any teachers that are in kindergarten and first, or maybe your own children are in there, this is a considerable amount of time for the teacher to be able to assess them in a one-on-one setting and be able to get that data that they can do something with. So a lot different look here for the math compared to what we were seeing in the reading. Kindergarten, look at there. They regain themselves in the math, so this will help us in trying to think about how we support them. Definitely had an increase there from the fall to the spring. Slight decrease for the first graders from the fall
fall to spring, but, much of that one. And then on the A math, this too was also taken on the computer again, just like the reading, and this is just showing all the different topics from grades 2 through 12, for those students that would be taking that one there. So if we look at second grade, third grade, and fourth grade, looking again for hopefully as much as a 10% growth from fall to spring, but seeing at least a 5% growth in grade 3. And a pretty good percentage of those that are at those grades. And this is showing 4 panels. This time I got my grade levels marked in here so you can see which one is 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Sheila, I noticed when going through the charts that you have for grades 5 through 8, seeing a decline. Is that typical for what we would have seen pre-COVID years?
It might have been, as I have reflected on this one, and again, there's been a lot of reflection just of my own as opposed to visiting with any of those at the building level. But I do wonder for specifically 7 and 8, if there might have been more of a decline this year than in the past, just due to the number of days we were hybrid and remote. And that could certainly have impacted that. But yeah, I have to go back and look to see, like how were we the year before. The one difficulty that I said, as I mentioned at the beginning, for this specific data point, is we only had the fall or the winter the prior year, but then we didn't assess in the spring. So I wouldn't have all 3 time periods to look, but we definitely go back and look to see if it was the same pattern or not.
And FAST wasn't used the year prior to that, correct? This is only the second year that we
This is only our second year that we've used that. And then this is showing the high school here, and again, that senior year, just ignore that spring one there, because there was a lot less students being assessed, so just looking at the other ones. But even here, I'm seeing a decline, and so, again, I do wonder if, knowing the number of weeks that students were in remote, and how that may have impacted this.
The 4x4 would also impact ours if you were in math first semester and not second semester.
That's true. Yeah, good point. All right, and then my last piece that I'm going to show you is about state assessments. And a little bit of information on this one. First of all, as you can see there, the spring of 2021, this is all going to be preliminary data. Where I would normally pull this from, it is not there yet. And so there may be a little bit of shift in this, but I wanted to at least give you kind of a preview of that. We administered the English and the math and the science, and there are the grade levels there. The English and the math would have been grades 3 through 8, and sophomores, and then science in 5th, 8th, and the 11th grade years. And then, as all of you may have remembered, that the spring of 2020, there was no participation due to the pandemic. So on this one, this is the first year that I can recall in quite some time that we actually received the scores before students went home. Many times in the past when we have been waiting to get the data, I know that we would be rapidly telling administrators, students would have left, hey, get these home, hopefully parents are going to see them and kids are going to see them. And it's been very chaotic in trying to accomplish that because it's just not as easy to communicate, whereas this year it came a little bit sooner and being able to allow administrators and teachers to communicate with families, but I don't know if it was still enough, so there might be some follow-up that later on. But in this one, the scores would be a level 1, 2, 3, 4, and a level 1 is not what you would want to score. Usually if you go level 1 as being better, you would want to be seeing your students scoring in the levels 2, 3, and 4. And you can see the definition there. It's just repeated each time. It's just the word choice shifts from limited to basic to effective text level. So this one is just kind of a whole big picture at a glance.
when you're thinking about the spring of 2019 to 2021. And what I did on this one was grouped it by ELA, math, and science. That first column there showing by each grade level, and this is a score as opposed to a percentage, but showing you what the average score was for the grade level in third grade, like 293, whereas the state average was 291. So we were slightly above that. And then continuing on and looking to see just how they did in both the math and science. And so as I look at that one, I can see that almost all of the scores improved from that 2019 to the 2021. And not to be pessimistic, but I was in this instance because I really wasn't expecting an increase given the school year we just went through. And so I think that's encouraging to see as far as the comparison, like you asked over and around this one, I was able to do that. Still a little bit of caution in that this is preliminary scores. And so this is a source that I pull out of our KITE system as opposed to actual verified scores from the state that I'll publish.
I have a question on that one, real quick. Both on like the Newton column and the state average column, is there any like reason why it looks like the scores kind of get lower as they age? So like the third grade scores are like 291 for the state ELA, and then by 10th grade it's 282. So why, is there any like educational reason behind that?
I wish I knew that. I'm looking at Kathleen, and I don't think she was in on that committee, but correct me if I'm wrong. I know that Brian Skinner did go.
It's similar for math too.
Yeah, I was on that, Brian and I served on that committee a few years back where we set the cut scores. There's this whole weird scientific principle behind the difficulty of the questions, and they rank the questions in order of difficulty. And then our job is to go through and figure out where would we think that the levels would be 4. Where would the student who gets a 3, where would they lose getting them right? Like, yep, they got all those. Oh, there's the one that would probably cause them to get it wrong. Yeah, it's crazy. The whole KU system has this way of going through it. So it just becomes a different cut score depending on the actual exam.
Yeah, and the cut score, if I remember right, does have a different range. Per grade bands too, it wasn't the same. So I couldn't say, okay, all of them should score no matter what grade level at a 300 or above, and they would receive this, or 300 below, they receive this, because it would not be the same.
Right.
Another one of those that I'm not going to be able to explain, but I just know they were different. Thank you, Kathleen.
Now you have your 18, 19, and 20, 21. But then it says ELA, like in 2021, with state average. So is that our school or is that the state average? I guess that
was my question.
You know what I mean? Is that our score in that second column of scores, or this one right here, or is that the state average?
That,
sorry.
yeah, that would be the
It's
state.
something to do.
That would be the state average.
That's the state average, okay.
And then Newton would be our score.
So I'm not seeing a new number
I'm not seeing a new
for
score on
this
this, but
year.
I'm confused by, you know what I mean?
No, I didn't organize that right. I'll have to redo that. I just now noticed that when I copied and pasted it over.
So we'll update the
I will update that. Yes, I will update that. Thank you. There's another spreadsheet that looks fabulous compared to this one, so. All right, we'll show you a different way. We'll switch to this one. This is showing you the 2019, and this is by grade level. And so what would be in green would be the district score, and what would be in blue would be the state average. This one I know that you can rely on. I was trying to put all of them together in one, but I can see where I mixed up my columns, so my apologies for that. So this was 2019, so just kind of seeing by grade level for ELA, how we were doing. And then this would be the 2021. And so like I can see a third grade there, district average for third grade was just slightly higher than the state average. I would like to point out that 8th grade there switch it to math, this was the 2019. And again, third grade being very close to that state average there. And then when I go to 2021, and seeing all, again, 8th grade and 10th grade for math being very close to the state average there compared to the district average.
So are we thinking with those bar graphs that you're showing there, that 5th to 8th grade, there seems to be some, or 5th to 7th grade, some big differences between the state average and the district average?
Right.
Do we think that's because of?
I could cite a variety of reasons.
Maybe because of.
COVID would be my first one, honestly. COVID would be my first one. When I think of the number of students that would have been quarantined, that would have been in remote only. When we did remote only as one example on that, those students could not assess at home. They had to come on site. And when I think back to working with the building principals and how much I'm sure they were not enjoying me bugging them, I'm like, how many are you getting to come back on site? And that was a really sensitive conversation to have because they had chosen that remote only for the entire school year, and then we get to this part of it and we're saying, no, you have to come on site. And I know that we had families that said, I'm not doing it. And they did have the option of not taking the assessment. So this is where I will wonder, once that data is cleaned up, because I don't know if this reflects that for those numbers of families that would not have come on site because of COVID. The state did give us, they actually called it an SC COVID-19, and so around that. So I wonder if some of that might shift a little bit on that, but that would probably be the first reason I think because that would show something that is very good. And then our last one here is science. This is only 3 grade levels that would be taking this assessment, not as frequently. And so you can see there how we did in 2019. And then in 2021. All of them very close, if not, as you can see on 11th grade, right at the state average. And as I said at the beginning, this was just probably about 4 or 5 data points over many things that I know that we look at across the school year, and certainly more deeply at that building level and classroom level, and trying to say, okay, I have this quantitative data, I have this qualitative data now. What decisions am I going to make to make poor instruction decisions, interventions, and putting plans in place so those students can learn. Any other questions that you might have?
Thing to remember, I guess, about the state assessments, those won't be finalized until the fall. This is just the preliminary data reports we get through cut. So once that gets transferred and finalized over to the KSDE side of that, then those scores can be decoupled.
Do you know from previous years if your preliminary scores are generally fairly close?
They're generally close.
I would just point out, I mean, the numbers look like they actually improved in 2021 versus 2019 in ELA and in math. So
It's not
I'd
horrible.
love to see us beat the state average, you know?
Right.
That kind of just looks like winning to me, but I mean, honestly, we did improve in a tough year. We improved our numbers from 2019, so credit to staff and students for challenging those tests and trying to do those.
One of the things I noticed, was that not only did in some of the areas that we improved, but if you look, the state average has actually dropped. And so we've made, in some areas, we made some increases. Yeah, we're not up to the state average, but almost every one of the categories the state dropped, and we actually moved in the right direction.
Which is not horrible. We're gonna get that.
There's been a lot of speculation wondering what did this last year look like? And so I don't know the future, that nobody wants to do that again. So I'm anxious to see what happens this following year and then have a whole other year to look at. Thank you. Our next item is NHS academic recognition.
All right, so I shared this with you this evening, so it's probably your school email, but I quickly realized this year that this is a hot topic that I wasn't aware of until it started coming up. And it's a very complicated topic. There's two very strong sides to it. There's the side that feels very strongly that we should weight grades for more rigorous high academic level courses. And there's a side that thinks that we should not have weighted grades because it keeps kids from taking the classes that truly interest them. It kind of forces them into AP only or honors only, and then they have to sacrifice electives or CTE courses or other individualized courses due to trying to be within that track for cum laude and with weighted grades. So what I did is try to put together kind of the history. We had a committee this year that kind of brought all the history together, which I tried to put into this one PowerPoint, and then also gave their different perspectives. Ended up meeting individually with everybody on that committee so I could make sure I truly capture for you kind of the different perspectives and philosophies. But it sounds like this has kind of been going on for maybe 2 or 3 years, this debate. And so we're kind of getting to the point where we need to decide what we want to do. Do we want to leave it? Do we want to change it? Or get rid of it or whatever. So the timeline is just a quick snapshot there. It was approved back in 2013. If you remember Nathan Dick, he was a big pusher of this. He was our gifted teacher at that time and wanted to make sure kids were not penalized for taking more rigorous courses. So he rightfully so pushed for cum laude and weighted grades in 2013 and then weighted grades in 2014. Both were approved. What we did discover through this process is the initial course list that was intended on being approved. It wasn't actually in the minutes. Was expanded, and so even what was in the as we go back and look at transcript, even some of the things that were in the handbook as weighted, there were some additional courses that ended up being weighted as well. There wasn't necessarily a approved process for that, so I don't know that anybody did anything wrong. There was just some discrepancies on initial intent versus what actually happened. And so what's weighted has kind of expanded, or initially was expanded, and then kind of just been muddy since then. And then I guess from what I understand, there was a presentation in 2019, May of 2019, where the board basically said, go back to the drawing board, have a committee, and then from what I can tell, that did not happen during the 1920 school year. So then this kind of came back around kind of after COVID was kind of in full swing, maybe around November, December last year. I started getting emails from parents and teachers talking to me about this, and so that's kind of how it got festered back up, and so here we are today. So that's kind of the timeline. Does anybody have questions on that? How it kind of got to here?
I'll just add that in 2019, it was actually administration that kind of pulled back as well. It wasn't necessarily a board direction.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay. Yeah. And like I said, I've kind of gotten just stories from everybody, so I don't know. And then just trying to make this. Yeah. So this is what from the initial PowerPoint that Mr. Dick put together, and I will say that what he initially was wanting to do was successful in that we do offer way more AP courses now, and much of that is due to the fact that he pushed for those weighted grades and for that cum laude system change. So we, at this point in time, we were kind of at the bottom of the league with only offering 4, and we now offer 8. So we've doubled since 2013, and a lot of that is due to that change. And then the implementation schedule, this is what was approved for the cum laude system. So there's really two different topics here. There's the cum laude system, which is your graduation, kind of what chords you get and kind of how high your academic level is. And then there's the weighted grades discussion, but they intertwine because your weighted grades impact whether you make cum laude. So there's two different kind of topics that we're discussing, but they work together. So this was for the cum laude system and basically just how they phased it in. Just more informational there. So this is the cum laude system. It is based on GPA, ACT score, honors, classes that you have to take, and AP classes. So one thing that was a consensus through the committee is that everybody would like to get rid of ACT scores as part of the cum laude. The reason being, you'll have, and I think there's an example on one of the slides, you could have a kid that takes rigorous courses all the way through high school, has a 4.0, and doesn't make any level of cum laude just because they didn't do well in their ACT test. So the thinking, I don't know that there was any teachers that were against getting rid of, or that were against us removing that as a requirement. We don't feel like that's necessary for cum laude. The debate stands with whether it should just be GPA or if we should continue to require certain honors and AP courses in order to make cum laude. And that again goes back to, for example, a student said they dropped orchestra because they needed to fit in more AP or honors courses. Or a student that's in the welding program doesn't have the ability to take certain courses. So that's kind of where the two different sides are on that. And these are just some board notes about some of the approval of these things. So the weighted grades, the way that works is AP classes are weighted a little bit higher, and then your honors courses. So the intention is if a kid decides to take a more rigorous course and it's weighted, and they say they get a B instead of an A, they still are going to be at that level as if they got an A in a normal course. So they're not punished for taking that rigorous course, because if they had taken the regular course, they probably would have got an A, just because it wasn't as difficult. So that's kind of the thinking behind weighted grades. Any questions on that? Fairly straightforward. One thing to note on weighted grades is that some universities will take that into consideration. It could help a kid, but most it does not. Most will take the unweighted GPA. So as far as the benefit for our students, from what we can tell and what our counselors say, it doesn't necessarily benefit them outside of the cum laude system as far as those weighted grades. These are the honors courses we currently have. One of the issues we're running into, though, is now everybody's wanting to create an honors course. Honors drama, honors Spanish, honors whatever. Name a course and throw honors in front of it. What that poses as a difficulty for me and for our counselors is that the more singletons that we offer, or classes that are only offered at one time of the day, one time of the year, it makes scheduling a nightmare. And so if we continue to add a bunch of honor courses, one, it just muddies down the system and it defeats the purpose, and then two, it makes it a scheduling nightmare for us. I would also say that and our math department is actually moving in this direction where they can offer honors and regular at the same time, because they're just going to differentiate and use competency-based grading, and they can kind of make that happen within the same class. So we move in that direction, it'll help in that manner as well. So these are the AP courses we currently offer. Like I said, we have 8. So we offer these tests at the end of the year, with the exception of studio art, which is actually a portfolio. So this was the 19 board meeting where that committee presented. I think there was some public comments, and then the board notes said that they will return for action in June 10th, 2019 meeting. If I remember right, Joni said the notes just said work on it during the next year, that meeting, somewhere in that meeting. I can't remember where. But, so anyway, basically the directive was to go back to get more feedback from students and from parents and et cetera during the 1920 school year. And this was from that same board meeting, this was when they were proposing to do away with weighted grades. So that's Lisa's kind of statement for that. Oh, there it is. I did have it in there. So then at the June meeting, the recommendation was, and that was in the handbooks, was to go back to look at it some more. So our objective with our committee was to find an academic recognition system that still rewards that academic rigor, but without making a kid have to choose and miss their orchestra class or miss their welding class. So that was kind of our objective. A lot easier said than done. I don't know that there's a perfect solution, but that's kind of why we're here today. So the scenario comparison, old versus new. So like before they did weighted grades, just some issues that they faced, and then some of the new issues that we face with the new system. So like I said before, a scenario from a class of 2020 transcript, a student met all the requirements for GPA, taking several courses, but since we have that ACT standard, they were not cum laude. Where you could have another kid that takes AP courses or honors courses and they're get B's or C's, they're still cum laude because their ACT score was high enough and they had weighted courses. So there's still some issues with our systems. And I'm not going to read all these to you since we're not making, I don't know that we're making a decision tonight, but that just shows you a comparison of what may be an issue within the current system. So the weighted GPA of 1 is a 4.267, and they don't make any level of cum laude. Another one has an unweighted of 3.1, a weighted of 3.5, and they're at the highest level of cum laude. So just kind of showing how there's a little bit of a flaw to it. So this is probably the slide to look at the most as you kind of think about what we should do moving forward. These are kind of this is just a summary of the two sides of this philosophy. And where everybody stands. And again, I'm not going to read those to you, but it's really a distinction between rewarding rigor versus allowing that choice for students. And this is really the same thing, just another way to put it, maybe more in like 3 different categories. So these were kind of some specific proposals, so I'll just throw these out as ideas. That different people within the committee had put together. So one proposal was to change the cum laude system to only use GPA rather than having the other different levels within that, like the classes you take in the ACT, and then removing all the non-core and only doing those AP courses for the weighted and honors. And then another proposal was to keep the cum laude, but again, solely on GPA, increase the GPA requirements since we're removing some of those other things to make them stand out, making it where it's a little bit harder to get onto that. So making the GPA go up a little bit. And then, so that was pretty much the main one of that one. And then the third one there is to base solely on GPA, only weight AP courses, not honors. And basically, with AP, there's a standard that those teachers have to teach to, and there's a test at the end. So we know for a fact they're teaching the rigor that it requires. I really can't say that for honors classes. We hope that all our honors teachers are doing that. I'm sure most are, but there's no standard that they have to live to be honors. So really, AP is really the only one that has a set standard. Now, there are pre-AP courses. We don't have those, but we could look into doing those in the future if we went to AP only as weighted.
Does the AP test factor into a student's grade? No.
Yeah, no, and not all of them take the AP test. Some choose not to.
That test is usually really late in the spring.
Yeah, it's in early May. And then the last was to get rid of weighted grades completely. There are quite a few people in this boat. One, because like I said earlier, it's really not a benefit outside of high school. It only benefits really in our cum laude system. But again, it doesn't necessarily reward that rigor for taking those AP courses. So those are just some specific proposals. So what could we do about this? We can leave it the same, move forward, just keep doing as we are. Again, what I worry about with that is, one, we continue to hear the grumblings, but two, we continue to have teachers wanting honors courses. And then remove ACT score requirement. I think that's a no-brainer. If we don't do anything else, I think we do that. Based on GPA alone, we remove those other requirements in the triangle. I don't know if you remember the triangle from when it was first approved. But basically, we would just have GPA under each one of those rather than those other items. And then GPA alone with increased standards, so upping those GPA requirements. Some feedback from students and parents, just so you can see that there's two sides to the story, and every parent's got different, I mean, based on what their kid needs or their interests, have a different opinion. Same with our teachers as well. This was a quote that kind of summed up what colleges are looking for, because that's a question parents have a lot when it comes to the weighted grades, but ultimately they're going to look at the context of your classes. So they don't care about the weighted GPA, but if they see you took a bunch of AP classes, then that's going to benefit you and will benefit you over taking a bunch of general and having a 4.0. So when they're looking at those big scholarships, getting into graduate schools, things like that, they're really going to look at the context. They're not just going to look at that bottom number you put on your application. They're going to look at your transcript. So the weighted GPA is not as important as what you take. And then there's this, I just emailed a bunch of admissions people to get some more data on whether they, and all of them except for one, don't worry too much about weighted grades. So these were the only items of consensus. We don't want to do away with cum laude. We think it's a better system than the Val South, so we do want to keep that. Removing the ACT was a consensus item. We don't want students to have to pick classes or have to choose between orchestra and AP, whatever. But finding that solution is a tough thing. And we've talked this over for years, and at this point, everybody that has strong feelings really just wants a decision to be made. And that's what I got.
So when would this go into place?
Right away.
I know which grades would it affect?
As far as the changes, it would happen right away.
No, I mean, like juniors, would it affect the juniors? It would change, so if the kid's taking all these weighted grades, it just washes it out?
Well, I don't know that it washes it out, but it would, like, are you saying like if we remove some of the requirements?
No, what I'm talking about is weighted grades. So if the kid has a 4.2, does he still have his 4.2?
Oh, yeah. No, you don't change the transcript retroactively, no.
But I think one thing that Matt might be alluding to is that if you make a change that impacts everybody all of a sudden, then people are going to be like, well, why was I taking all of these courses this whole time? I think a gradual rollout would probably be.
You could do it that way.
I'm sure it would be more complicated for you guys.
Grandfather in like we do with graduation requirements, we can change those.
Yeah.
And I think when we implemented this back in 2013, it was rolled in. So that
Yeah, that was the implementation schedule. You could do it either way. You could either do it starting with next year's freshmen, or it could take effect right away. The benefit to it going into effect right away is it could immediately give some kids more choice right away, which would be the purpose of making a change, I think. So it would have a positive. Now, yeah, there's still kids that took classes.
It would seem unfair to the older students.
Sure,
That have been
yeah.
working towards these.
Although the older students, if they still have one or two of those requirements they need to hit, and they now don't have to do those, and they can take welding or whatever, then maybe it is a benefit. I don't know. It's a catch-22.
What types of people were on the committee that worked on this?
Mostly teachers, or all teachers.
We had teachers, counselors, assistant principals, Greg Beats, Janet Crittenden run it. We had teachers from core subjects and from CTE courses. We have world language, arts, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was a variety of teachers.
All teachers and the students or parents?
Well, so what the committee did was more compiling, and then I took that to principals council and site council. Yeah, and got their feedback. But it's all split. The feedback's split. That's the problem.
It depends on what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Another point that was brought up last time we had this discussion is, maybe colleges don't care about the weighted GPA, but scholarships do.
That's the same thing. So if you look at those emails, when I talk to admissions, they would note both scholarships and admissions.
So you don't think that's a true statement?
I don't think. In most cases, now there are some colleges that will take them. I think it was the Cadet School at K-State that did take weighted GPA. But for the most part, most of our state schools are saying, no, it's the context of what you took, not your weighted GPA.
Is that kind of
to consensus with out-of-state schools as well?
Talking to Jana, yes. I did not email beyond our in-state schools, but yeah, she said for the most part. I mean, if you look at the trend right now, they're doing away with even like ACT score as an admission requirement. They're trying to make scholarships and admission more, context-based rather than a bottom line number. So that's kind of the movement in college admissions and scholarships, is to look more at the context rather than a score. I can't say that it wouldn't benefit a kid at any point, but for the most part, weighted grades are not going to benefit them when they're applying for those.
But current GPAs now for those students that have been taken, their juniors and seniors, if this would be implemented right away, their GPA would be protected.
Yeah, you don't change anything on a transcript retroactively, so if you got a weighted grade this year, that won't change.
But the committee's not recommending we get rid of weighted grades either.
No, well, that was one of the recommendations, but no.
That's a possible option.
Possible option, but I think the middle ground would not be to do that. We would still weight something.
I think even if it just means our district local recognition, if that motivates a kid to take more rigorous courses, I think it's still a good thing.
Sure.
And if it does, yeah, if you're that student that takes an AP class and gets a B, I like the idea that, you probably would have gotten an A if we would have just taken a regular course. So I like the idea of still motivating our students to take that more rigorous line of instruction. So, and I mean, the cum laude system, we looked at those different steps, with my own high school kid. It's still something, that helped him sort of think what courses he wants to take through high school. So, and I even heard in we had our meeting there later at Norm's, and we had a senior that said, she appreciated that system and it motivated her to take more rigorous courses. So I think it is doing good for students. I think it is motivating to them, even if it is just local recognition.
Sure.
So as far as the items of consensus here, removing the ACT requirement, looks like the only real major change we're looking at or recommending from that committee.
So to this point, I didn't give any recommendation. I just kind of showed you the different points of view. I can give you my recommendation, what I would show as the middle of the ground, but that's up to you guys. So.
Caleb's running for senator, by the way.
Is the other side of basically what Luke said, is that the weighted grades, though, kind of steer kids towards those more rigorous courses because they want the higher GPA to possibly.
Well, that
and then
or
they don't take well.
That and they don't want to be penalized if they end up getting a B in the harder class. So, because with the weighted, it's almost like getting an A in a normal class. So, like, I can give you an example because he told me I could. Eli Reddington he told me he would not have taken the AP course if it wasn't weighted because he knew he was kind of borderline whether he would be able to get an A or not. But since he knew it was weighted, he went ahead and took the AP rather than the general.
I look at it from a scheduling perspective, having all those honors courses, so you've got an AP biology, then you're looking at a regular biology, an AP biology, and honors biology, you've got to try to schedule it more. That just makes it more difficult for kids from even a school this size. I mean, you start creating layers like that, because that kind of creates tracks where they almost have to take different courses.
And you said something like teachers keep wanting an honors version of their course. Is that so more kids sign up for that class?
Yeah. Because then it'd be weighted.
They're after the higher GPA.
Yeah, then it'd be weighted.
Well, and if we did the GPA only, but maybe raise the standards, you could get rid of taking this many honors classes, this many AP classes, but they're still going to probably take them because they're weighted.
Which is similar.
It could be simpler, but
what I would propose is similar.
Okay. Did I kind of hear a recommendation there?
I can show you my recommendation.
He has a written recommendation if you want to see it.
I'll disagree.
Is that right, Mallory?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I had it ready just in case.
There
it is.
So much for everything rolling over you guys.
So here's exactly what I would do, what I would call the middle of the road. I would keep the cum laude system, but I'd base it solely on GPA in order to remove that feeling where you have to take these tracked classes if you have other interests. I would raise the GPA level so that it's still rigorous in the fact that you have to work pretty hard to be recognized for this honor, and it doesn't water down the recognition. And I would only weight the AP courses or have a system for some college credit courses. We have some kids that are advanced where they take a college class even higher than an AP class, and I don't want them to not be able to weight that just because they're, So I think there has to be a system, but I think there needs to be a system. It shouldn't be just the principal saying, hey, go ahead, weight that. There needs to be a set system where the department chair can say, this class is as rigorous or more rigorous than the similar one that we offer as AP, and then the board approves it so that there's not anything kind of going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about. And with AP having that set standard, we know that the rigor is there and it's not an honors class, it just has the title and it's not really an honors class. The thing is, kids will still take some of those honors courses that feed into those AP because you have to have those as a prerequisite. So while they may not be weighted as honors, they would still take those courses in order to get into their AP courses. But I would remove the honors just because there's not that standard that the teachers are set to, and we could explore adding some pre-AP courses rather than having the honors. I wouldn't have both, but if we wanted to have pre-AP instead of honors, we could look into doing that, because then you still have that standard.
This will allow us to expand the AP courses that are offered?
No, it wouldn't. It would keep it the same.
Just
Yeah. Which is pretty high. I mean, most schools don't offer that many. I would say, is that true, Kathleen?
Yeah, this wouldn't keep us, it wouldn't force us to add more AP, but it wouldn't prevent us from. If we still wanted to add AP art or something, we could still do that.
Yeah, I don't think it would affect that at all.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would consider the middle of the road. That, talking to people on both sides of this philosophy they feel comfortable with.
So what grade do the AP courses start?
It depends on how advanced you are. You could be taking AP as, we have 7th graders that take high school courses, so you could be in 9th grade. Normally, though, it's the 11th and 12th graders. Yeah.
I want to be outsider on the thought of this. It doesn't sit great with me, and I know that I respect your work, and so I'm willing to learn what your thought is, but would you all really consider calling someone who graduated from Lade from high school, a camp score, and an ACT score of 21, an honors graduate? I mean, I'm just saying, you're putting your highest brand or label on that person, and I don't know, especially seeing some of the data that we saw about kind of where the school district is in certain comparisons. I would think that rigor, that label should be, if you're going to change it very carefully, because it is, what you're saying is, this is our finest product. And your finest product, from my humble perspective, should be able to score 21 in the ACT.
But I don't think our finest product or most highest achieving kids are all college bound. And I think we should be able to have this kind of recognition, even if you have no intentions of going on to college, which is really the only reason you take an ACT, correct? I mean, I guess they're free now for everybody, so you
Yeah,
can take it, but
some more kids
that's kind
can.
of the point of taking ACT.
If you wanted to keep an assessment of some sort, you could also, instead of ACT, you could say, or a work key score level of so high, if you wanted to keep it, because that's the workplace counter to ACT.
Which test is that?
The work keys test. It's ACT work keys. It's actually a workplace readiness skills test for mathematics, writing, team leadership, teamwork, and stuff like that. So it's also one that's accessible to all of our 11th grade students to the state.
So in most cases, to that point for ACT, it's either a language deficiency or a learning disability that would cause the student to be very intelligent but unable to be successful in ACT. I know the example that we have in here where the kid didn't get any recognition. He had a language, he was ELL. So he had a big language barrier, so tests were very difficult for him, not because he wasn't intelligent enough, but because he couldn't understand the language. So, I mean, he was a highly intelligent, scored very well because he could, when you're doing anything else, to you to for that language barrier, but within that standardized test, you don't have those necessarily. So that would be the only reason I would say that may be not necessarily true.
with your recommendation, I mean, for a kid that didn't take an AP course, and they couldn't have more than one B a year probably to get that 3.8.
Yeah, I don't really, math's not necessarily a good thing for me, but yeah, you would have to be pretty on top of things even if
You
you're.
would have to get one or less B's per
Yeah.
year the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, 3.8 is pretty good. But 4.0 is really good. So, I mean, I think it still gives it that. I mean, it's not like we're going to have every kid graduating with the 4.0 board or anything like that.
Caleb, what do you think about the kind of phased in rollout of any kind of change?
Again, it depends on the kid, whether it's better or worse for those kids. I'm fine either way. We can phase it in or we can do it right away.
If it happened right away, it would help them.
Yeah, and really, it just hurts some feelings if you do it right away rather than phasing it in, and it doesn't necessarily help anybody except for those freshmen coming in.
Yeah, I think if we made a change right away, we're definitely gonna have a lot of comments.
You're gonna have some comments out here anyway.
So I'm just worried about my junior when I get home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna get here full. You did what?
I've taken 3 or 4 honors classes already, so it's like.
I think rolling it in, you worry about that logistically, like on the boards of counselors and stuff like that, because then they've got to make sure that we're accurately addressing each one of the levels for graduation honors and stuff. But that's just a technical issue. It just has to be.
The only one I probably wouldn't roll and maybe do effective immediately is the ACT score.
Yes.
I'm of the mindset so let them operate the building, and I'm of the mindset of letting you operate the building and letting your team do what you guys think you need to do as fast as you can. That's my 2 cents.
My 2 cents would be, since this was such a hot topic in the past, and we did have a lot of parent and student feedback, if we make a change, I would like our parents and our students to have an opportunity to come and share their thoughts with us. I would feel better about that before making a decision. I know a lot of people don't look at our agenda ahead of time, and if they did, to see NHS academic recognition, they might not have known what this conversation is going to entail. I personally would not feel comfortable making this decision tonight. Number one, for me, there's a lot of information that I want to process, and sometimes I need to sleep on that. I would like to revisit this again soon, but take just a little bit of time. I wouldn't feel comfortable making it just right now.
Yeah, there's no rush. Really, as long as it's done before first day of school, we'll be okay.
And kids have already picked out their schedules for next year.
They have, but you can do schedule changes for up to the first 2 weeks of school, I believe. And it's the first week of school, I can't remember that.
Yeah, I definitely think if we're going to make a decision this summer, we need to have a lot of communication, letting people know that a possible change was going to happen, and so they can come, give us their feedback, and also make changes to their schedules if they want to do that. And I really think we should do a phase-in rollout.
So then when we keep honors classes or no?
Yeah, you still want your honors classes, especially in those contents that lead into those AP courses. So
They just wouldn't be weighted.
They just wouldn't be weighted. If you did this proposal, now you can do
Will we
whatever.
take away the honors classes for AP, so they would be weighted?
We could eventually work to that. There's a lot that goes into becoming AP because you have to send the teacher to get trained and certified and those kinds of things. But the kids that are going to take AP courses will still take honors because they need that as a prereq to get into the AP classes. And again, the colleges are going to look at what you take. So if these are kids that are college bound, they're going to want to take those AP courses. There's still, Board of Regents did away with their classes you have to take for entry, but they still have what they consider like the what they recommend you take through high school. And obviously, we still want our college bound kids to do that. And then plus, if depending on what they're going into, if they're a high level academic kid, they need to be taking honors in AP. So.
On some of your honors courses like honors biology, honors chemistry, those would not have to stay because those wouldn't necessarily feed into, like honors biology wouldn't feed into AP biology. They're taking either AP biology or regular biology, correct?
Right.
You know what I mean? So you've got some of those that could allow you for
Yeah,
some more flexible
there are some
schedule.
honors that could go away if needed, if the kids quit taking them. All
Or
that.
they could become AP, like you can offer the AP chemistry rather than.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think this proposal kind of solves for the issue of kids not taking the classes they really want to take? Because it kind of
I
takes
do.
away the honors part?
Yeah, I
of
think it really encompasses IPS's intent with kids taking what they want to take. If you're college bound and you're a high level kid, you still take high level courses. If you're kind of a kid that's college bound but you want to take some hands-on courses, go for it.
I could see, so I just kind of did the math. So if you take 7 courses, you can have 1 B, the rest have to be A's to be over 3.8. So I could see some kids sitting at 3.7, and then all of a sudden their senior year, well, I better take all these AP classes because I got to push that up. So I still think you could run into kids taking classes in this track. Like the example you mentioned earlier, I only took that AP class because I wanted to fit this criteria.
You'll see that both ways. So an example one of the teachers gave was a kid that took an AP class in math and I don't remember, got a B or something. And then this was before cum laude, and then wanted to get their GPA up. So they took the lower level version of it. So if they know they're going to get an A in it as the weighted, then yeah, they might do it that way. But if they're not sure if they'll get an A, they may take the regular class, which is why AP teachers would prefer to be weighted so that they aren't afraid to take that class. So yeah, that would probably work both ways.
I'm kind of gonna put myself out here on a limb, and hopefully this is all right, but I'm just thinking about our re-energizing the individual plan of study, as you just mentioned, and I know that we've had all different kinds of conversations that wouldn't have been at the board table with any of you, but I've worked a lot with Caleb and his staff, counselors and teachers, as well as Joey and Chad and staff there, and I think all of us are wanting to try to put something there for the students to recognize their individuality, if you will, but yet still encourage them to get to that level that meets what their path might be. And I just wonder if, I know this next year individual plan of study will have a more concentrated, cohesive, consistent look for the students, and I just wonder if that might also add to this. In trying to help those students think about, based on my experiences, based on what it is that I'm looking for each school year, and trying out some of those courses to better help them decide, am I going to the honors route, the AP, and then eventually get to what are my plans post-secondary.
Yeah, the better we do IPS, the better our kids will take courses that they need to take for their goals, for sure. Yeah.
Are there any other questions right now? It's a lot to take in, so I'm sure there'll be more later.
Until I get home.
Wait till I sleep on this, Renee, right? And start getting the emails. Thank you for your presentation and recommendation. I appreciate that.
Yep.
And to your group, I know the committee was met and a lot of people are involved in this, so thank you. Our next item is Newton High School 2021-22 handbook review. And this is just the first read of the student handbook. Are there any questions at this time, comments? Proposed 2021-2022 BOE meetings.
We have those listed, just some things to kind of think about a little bit. The budget hearing calendar or schedule might be a little bit different this year. Well, it will be a little bit different this year. Since they have a revenue neutral clause now in legislation, we can maybe be able to publish, we'll probably have to have our budget published by the 20th of September, I think it is, instead of August 25th like it normally is. So we will have some information for you, probably the first meeting in July, to see where we are. I'm sure that we won't be revenue neutral because our assessed valuations have gone up, so that just the 20 mills alone that we have to levy according to statute. It's gonna take us out of that. So there's just more hearings we have to have and more hoops that we have to jump through, so it'll mean that will be extended. So that might change some of those August board meetings where it says the budget hearing on the third Monday, that might actually be in September rather than in August as it's written there. And one thing I wanted to make clear, that Monday, March 14th, that is the Monday of spring break. Our office is still open, but just if any of you thought that you'd be taking your spring break already, it wouldn't be here, we might want to look at changing that day, but other than that, we're good with the dates that you guys. So just something to consider between now and next week.
And if that budget hearing was moved to September, the August dates would be the 2nd and 4th?
Yes, yeah, we would just make those the regular second.
So those might change a little bit.
It might change a little bit, yeah. All based upon what we have to do for that revenue neutral stuff. But I guess that March 14th, if that is something that you guys want to think about, if you're with your spring break, if you definitely take off for that whole week, we want to have a quorum here for sure. You don't want Sheila and I just making all the decisions.
And the January 24, we talked about a work session.
With new board members, we'll probably have some new board members made, well, at least one new board member, for sure.
So minimal business.
Yeah.
You guys can make the decisions if you want to take
Yeah,
responsibility.
sure, do that.
So it looks like we would just have one this July, and then August, September would be a little different. With just one meeting in July with the ESSER funds and all of that and personnel, I feel like that would still be okay to just have one meeting?
Probably so. If we had to do something, I don't see us, like with the ESSER 3 funds, having to build up in a plan between now and that time. I
With
just
the
don't.
approval from the state, all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll decide this in July at our meeting.
Yes.
The next item is approved signing bonus for hard-to-fill teaching positions.
This was something that was discussed, or just mentioned in passing at the last board meeting. And then I had a board member reach out, and we've had a couple positions, especially recently, that are hard to fill. This gives us some options in that regard. It's one thing that you don't have to negotiate, obviously, because those people that we are hiring, they're not under the contract or anything like that. So that's something that in my previous district, I was given the authority to do. Only the superintendent was allowed to give that authority, because if I were a building principal, I'd be giving everybody a signing bonus because I wanted to make sure and hire whoever it was. So I always had some negotiations with principals when it came to that kind of stuff. But it gives us some flexibility where we don't lose based upon dollars. $500 or $1,000. And a lot of times what I would do in those instances, there were a lot of ways that we made some deals, so to speak. Sometimes it would be like a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal, where it would be like a $3,000 signing bonus over 3 years. We had to be there all 3 years, and we get $1,000 per year for that. So in those hard to fill positions, it wouldn't be something that would become standard, but gives us some flexibility. So we don't have to decide that tonight. If you want to, you can. If you want to think about that, reach out, ask some others, ask some questions. I'm totally good with whatever you folks want to do in that regard, but this is helpful sometimes.
I mean, I was the one that, I'll throw myself out there, that talked to Fred about this. We were having great difficulty hiring a French teacher, and Caleb did a marvelous job, but they kept resigning as fast as we were getting hired.
Yes.
So, third time's a charm, so we got her now, we just approved her, so she can't lose.
Well, don't say that.
But I talked to him about that situation, and also we talked about the social worker positions that might be difficult to fill. And he mentioned that he had done this in his previous district, and I think whatever levers we can give, and it's just a really competitive environment right now to hire people, and whatever levers we can give Fred and his staff to get us high quality candidates, I think is a positive for us.
I I agree, and I like the piece where it is over a number of years, because we're seeing, not just on a state level, but on a national level, how difficult it is to fill certain positions. And if we're able to fill that, I don't want to be doing that every year, because someone's moving. I would like to have some consistency and retention with our staff whenever possible.
The problem you run into there is this person got the bonus, this didn't, this person didn't. It's not fair, and all I can say is, you're right. It's not, but what would you rather us find a C teacher or hire an A teacher? If we can, I'd rather hire the A teacher.
And I know we've gone multiple years sometimes in this district with the hard to fill position being open because we just couldn't find anyone. And that makes it hard on the other staff in the building, and it's not what serves our kids best.
That doesn't happen just here.
No, it's all over. Yes.
It doesn't happen just here.
Does anybody have any concerns about having this option with Fred to work with?
I mean, I think the concern is just wanting to make sure that the staff, the existing staff, we want to be fair to them and, you know, but at the same time, even they probably don't want to have, it's not even just a matter of a C teacher or an A teacher, it's a teacher at all sometimes. And we don't want to have unfilled positions, so, yeah, at the end of the day, especially when we're spreading it out over 2 years or 3 years possibly, I think it's good for you to have that option to provide.
And I think from a financial perspective, it's going to be fairly neutral, because as you guys know, we've been mentioning some of those teachers that don't get filled for years. Obviously, there's a savings in the salary that we would have spent that we're not spending. So when you look at the numbers in those terms, it really doesn't look like anything that's going to affect us in a negative way from our budget. It should be fairly neutral.
So from a financial standpoint, what would
It should be neutral.
a big
Yeah.
concern?
So we wouldn't sell the farm, I guarantee you, because it's one of those deals, like there was one instance where this person would have taken a $700 a year pay cut, but they would have been willing to coach. And so I just told them, look, here's the deal. I'll give you a signing bonus. If we have a coaching position, you don't get the bonus, you have to take the coaching position, you know, those kinds of things. So you make it to where it just leaves you with a lot of options, or just maybe one time, hey, there'll be a $500 signing bonus if you do it, that kind of stuff. So
Which along those lines, we offered that in this past year anyway.
we did for classified. We did for classified.
Well, if you want to sell the farm, that's fine, I'll just take it out of your salary and start it over.
So, Fred, is this just for certified teaching positions, or is it like Matt mentioned, maybe the social work positions also? Or
Well, they are certified. Those are on the salary schedule. And that's another thing to consider too, sometimes for administrative positions. You know, I do know that we've lost administrators, you know, based upon, you know, the dollars weren't there, or you give a moving stipend and you don't. You know, so if we did this kind of step back, it would help overcome some of that as well, if you were those certified positions. I just want to be real careful. I want to be real consistent, I don't want people to think that we're just throwing away money. It's really to get the people.
Would you, when you do this, would you coordinate with, or at least talk to the board president? It doesn't have to be approved each time, but that's.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I always talked with my board president before in my previous district. The nice thing about it too, I've got Jane, and Jane being the HR director, she's going to make sure that I don't do anything else.
So it sounds like we have a number of people that are for this. Do we want to go ahead and make a motion for that?
I'll move to approve that the USD 373 Board of Education authorize the superintendent to offer a signing bonus for hard-to-fill positions of up to a total of $5,000.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. That takes us to board comments.
You know, just wanted to send a shout out to our team, and Fred, I know you were out working, I think it was Friday night, and just to know that you're out there, I felt so helpless that I couldn't do anything. Almost was like, can I just ride with you? Because you know you're not alone in this, but you kind of were. Well, I know you got people, but just thank you for that. I know that's a lot to take on, and you're always upfront and leading the charge and getting things done, and I really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to people relaxing over the summer and getting ready for a good year next year. So
To be clear, Chris Schaefer and his team, the maintenance guys especially, they really busted their tails Friday night, Saturday, did what they could. That was pretty cool. It was just an amazing, walking through that vista, the service center.
And his team and you guys had trucks rolling with them that night, right?
The Ray Rookley guys beat me there.
That's awesome. Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool here.
Yeah, and Anthony too, I was going to mention this as well, sure, give them the kudos, but to you guys as well, it was the board members, because I know there's several of you reached out, called different directors and different members of the leadership team, as what can I do? You know, and that was pretty awesome, because Fred, yeah, they were out there that night, but there was definitely people here on the board and people in our community, like I mentioned, Ray Roofing, almost doing too good of a job. I'm like, leave some of it in place. We need an picture for insurance, you know? You guys are out there moving stuff already. But I think that that's, it really speaks to the community and how invested people are, so it's really neat to see.
I guess, I did want to point out that I did all I could with my hand-in-hand skills, and which was best for the community. I stayed home.
I just appreciate, Sheila, all your work and your reports today. This was really helpful. It's kind of fun to see all the graphs and everything. I really enjoy that. So, and Caleb, thank you for all the information. It's a lot to think about before our next meeting when we discuss it.
I'll just say the same thing. All the staff and all the work that you're doing to take the next step in making the district even better. And I really like our team. I think we all, leadership team, staff, board, all of us, I think are doing an amazing job. We have hard decisions to make sometimes, but I think we work really well as a team.
I will echo some of the comments. Huge shout out and appreciation to our maintenance staff especially. I was getting text messages and emails even up to midnight that night. And like Andy, I felt helpless, like, what do you do? And then I just think, can I make you food? I don't know. It's just you want to do something to help our staff. They're doing so great. And so many of you aren't even on contract right now, and you're working throughout the summer. And I see our maintenance crews out mowing constantly when I'm taking kids to events, and I see the long lines of food pickup and the cars rolling through. And so even though it's summer and I want our staff to relax, there's so many that don't get to kick their heels up. They don't get a summer off. And so we recognize that and appreciate that from all of you. So thank you. And that brings us to our adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?